Welcome to F1 Blogs, your new go-to destination for all things Formula One. Whether you're a seasoned race enthusiast or just starting your engines, we're here to bring you the inside track with in-depth analysis and engaging discussions. Get ready to dive deep. Today we're strapping in for a detailed look at the recent observations around Max Verstappen and Red Bull Racing, particularly after the Miami Grand Prix weekend. We'll be dissecting the performance dynamics, some operational challenges, and Verstappen's own pretty pointed remarks about the team's current form. Our mission here is really to extract the key insights from the analysis that's out there and, understand the underlying issues at play.
Yeah.
Is the seemingly unshakable dominance of that Verstappen-Red Bull partnership finally showing some cracks? And what are the key indicators we're seeing that suggest maybe a potential shift in the F1 landscape?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because that Miami weekend, it really did feel like a compressed version of their season so far, really. How so? Well, you saw Verstappen's brilliance, obviously, getting that pole position. I mean, that's a testament to his individual talent, right?
Absolutely.
But then you also saw the limitations of the package and those operational stumbles, too, like that unsafe release in the sprint race.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
And it sort of echoes Bahrain, doesn't it? Where the car wasn't quite there performance-wise, and then those very public pit stop problems just compounded their struggles. So this pattern, where Verstappen seems to be maybe outperforming the machinery or the team's execution isn't quite meeting his level, it's becoming a key narrative.
It feels less like isolated incidents and more
Systemic.
Exactly. It's just maybe a more systemic challenge they're facing.
Okay, so let's unpack that contrast a bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody disputes Verstappen's exceptional skill, and the analysis we're looking at, it really reinforces just how much he's extracting from that RB21.
It absolutely is. But it also highlights a crucial point, doesn't it? Even a driver like Max can only work with the inherent potential of the car and, crucially, the support of the team around him.
It's a ceiling, yeah.
And while the data suggests the Red Bull car is generally, the second quickest out there, maybe a small qualifying deficit to McLaren, it's not consistently the outright fastest.
Not week in, week out, no.
And perhaps more significantly, the team's operational performance hasn't always matched Verstappen's, relentless consistency.
That's a really good point. When the car is capable, he's invariably right at the front. But the team hasn't always provided that consistent platform.
You think about that lights to flag win in Japan.
Yeah.
That felt like a prime example of Verstappen just operating at the absolute limit, maybe even beyond what the car naturally wanted to do.
Spot on. And, this leads directly to Verstappen's own assessment, which was incredibly telling, I thought.
Ah, yes, the all of it comment.
Exactly. When he was asked directly, what's needed for a proper title bid? Is it more car performance or is it better operational execution? His immediate answer was just, yeah, all of it.
No hesitation.
None at all. And that wasn't just a throwaway line, I don't think. It felt like a really forceful acknowledgement that both areas need significant improvement.
And he followed it up, didn't he?
He did. He said, we need to make less mistakes and we need to find more performance, which, okay, sounds straightforward.
Simple enough on the surface.
Right. But it truly encapsulates that dual challenge they're facing. It's not just about bolting on more speed. They need to be sharper, a more error-free operation right across the board.
Okay, so drilling down into Miami specifically then, it's interesting because before the race weekend, a lot of the analysis suggested Miami wasn't actually an ideal track for the Red Bull package.
Yeah, expectations weren't sky high, were they? Even Verstappen seemed to temper expectations a little beforehand.
So how did he manage to snatch pole position then? What was the analysis there?
Well, it seems like it was probably a combination of things. There was that small floor upgrade, which likely gave them a marginal game.
Right.
Then you had McLaren, who perhaps didn't perfectly optimize their qualifying runs. They admitted as much themselves, I think.
Right. They felt the car was a bit tricky over one lap.
Yeah, exactly. Fast, but maybe hard to extract that last little bit consistently in qualifying trim. And then, let's be honest, you have to factor in Verstappen likely delivering an exceptionally strong lap. He wrung its neck.
Fair enough. So Red Bull can challenge McLaren over one lap, clearly.
They've shown that, yeah, several times this season.
But the race distance, that seems to be where the issues really surface.
That's the critical point. It tends to expose a key difference, which seems to be tire management.
Ah, the age-old problem.
Indeed. And Verstappen himself has pointed out that cooler track temperatures seem to favor them, which implies their car isn't quite as gentle on its tires over a full race stint compared to the McLaren.
Interesting. So hotter tracks might be more of a struggle.
Potentially. He even mentioned in Miami, I think, that they were still struggling a little bit with their limitations in the car, and those limitations just become much more obvious, much more pronounced during a long race run.
And the race day in Miami, well, it unfortunately seemed to prove him right, didn't it?
It really did. I mean, he led the first stint, looked reasonably comfortable initially.
Yeah, held up for McLaren's.
But ultimately, he fell back and finished, quite a long way behind both of them in the end.
His assessment afterwards was pretty blunt, wasn't it? Something like miles off.
Yeah, miles off. That really underscores the performance gap that just opened up during the race itself.
Now, there was some talk, wasn't there, that maybe his robust defense early on might have cost him some tire life for a time.
There was a little bit of that. Norris maybe suggested it cost him some time. But the analysis seems to indicate that the timing of the virtual safety car was actually a much more significant factor in bunching things up, particularly benefiting Russell.
Okay. So less about the defending, more about the VSC timing luck.
It seems that way. And the overall conclusion really appears to be that Verstappen probably got pretty much everything possible out of that RB21 during the race itself. He maximized it.
Which then brings us back, quite neatly, to the other side of Verstappen's comment. The operational side.
Yes. And this is where things get, well, particularly concerning, I think. The wavering performance of Red Bull's trackside operations.
For a team that used to be the absolute gold standard.
Exactly. They set the benchmark for years in F1 for operational excellence, especially pit stops. But now we're seeing some unsettling signs.
The pit stop errors are becoming more frequent, more noticeable.
They really are. You had that electrical issue in Bahrain that delayed both Verstappen and Tsunoda. Then Verstappen's slow second stop later in that same race because of a faulty wheel gun.
Right, the front right, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah. And then, of course, the very clear unsafe release during the Miami sprint with Antonelli nearby resulted in a penalty.
Yeah, that wasn't a good look.
Not at all. And this pattern, it starts to suggest it's more than just, random bad luck.
And isn't it quite telling that Jonathan Wheatley, who was such a key figure in building Red Bull's past operational strength, he recently made that comment about pit stops being a reflection of team morale. Now, okay, he was specifically talking about Sauber's improvement.
I see where you're going.
But it's hard not to read that as maybe an implicit commentary on Red Bull's current standards too, isn't it?
That's a very sharp observation. And the stats, well, they kind of back it up, don't they? Their fastest pit stop this whole season is only ranked 5th best overall.
Only 5th. Wow.
And they've only had one single stop crack the top 10 fastest times all year.
That's genuinely surprising for Red Bull.
It is. And these operational concerns, they seem to go beyond just the pit crew as well.
You mean like communication?
Yeah. Yuki Tsunoda has voiced frustration multiple times, actually, about the quality of team communication out on track.
Like that sprint qualifying incident in Miami.
Exactly. Where he felt his own session was compromised because of, communication issues regarding Verstappen's track position. It points to maybe a breakdown, or at least some friction there.
And then there's the whole ongoing saga of the second driver's seat, finding someone consistent alongside Max.
That adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it? It raises broader questions about the team's overall management, strategic decisions, maybe even driver development pipeline.
Plus, you can't ignore the high-profile departures, can you?
Yeah.
Losing people like Adrian Newey, Rob Marshall.
Absolutely crucial figures, people who were instrumental in building and maintaining that past dominance. It naturally makes you wonder about the stability and the future direction of the technical team.
So, okay, let's pivot slightly and look at the RB21 car itself again. Because despite all these challenges we've discussed, Verstappen has still managed to get some strong results.
Oh, for sure. 3 poles already, still right in the championship hunt. Let's not forget that.
No, definitely not. But the analysis suggests the car's performance window is, well, maybe a bit narrow and quite track-dependent.
That seems to be the case. It's fluctuated, hasn't it? Sometimes looking like the second quickest, other times maybe even the 4th quickest car on the grid. It's rarely looked like the clear, undisputed leader across a whole weekend.
Saudi Arabia seemed like a track where it really shone.
Yes, that looked like peak RB21 performance, didn't it?
But contrast that with Bahrain, where those balance issues seemed to really hurt them, put them further back in the pack.
Clearly 4th best that weekend, arguably. And even that small floor upgrade in Miami, it sounds like it only offered a pretty marginal improvement.
So it feels like Verstappen is in this constant battle each weekend, just to unlock the optimal setup, to find that sweet spot.
I think that's a fair assessment. He's working incredibly hard just to get it into that window.
So ultimately, the picture painted by the analysis is what? The RB21 is strong on certain tracks, maybe when everything aligns perfectly.
Yeah, pretty much. When the setup's right, Verstappen's driving lights out, the execution is flawless, and perhaps their rivals aren't quite at their best. Then it can look very strong.
But it lacks that consistent, across-the-board performance, particularly, as you mentioned, with tire management over a race distance.
That seems to be the key weakness compared to McLaren right now. And, it's interesting, Red Bull's apparent focus on analyzing McLaren's tire management and their anticipation about this upcoming technical directive on front-wing flexibility.
Yeah, what about that?
Well, it does raise some questions, doesn't it? It maybe suggests they might be looking at external factors, potential explanations for their performance deficit.
Rather than solely focusing on internal development and just making their own car faster?
Potentially, yeah. That's one interpretation. And you also have the factor of their new wind tunnel being delayed, which doesn't help their immediate development timeline either.
Right, more challenges.
It all adds up.
So as we look ahead then, it really boils down to some massive questions, doesn't it? Like, does Verstappen genuinely believe this RB21 can be developed enough to mount a sustained, successful title challenge this year?
That's the million-dollar question for him, isn't it?
And then looking further out, can Red Bull navigate the huge complexity of their own in-house power unit project and produce a competitive car for the new regulations next year?
A massive undertaking, especially without someone like Newey overseeing the big picture, perhaps.
And maybe the biggest question of all, can they actually keep a driver of Verstappen's caliber long term, especially with all the persistent rumors linking him to potential moves elsewhere in the future?
Yeah, the driver market speculation is always swirling around him, isn't it? These are really the key uncertainties that are going to shape the whole narrative of this F1 season and probably the next few.
So summing it all up, this deep dive into the current situation with Max Verstappen and Red Bull Racing, it really shows a complex picture.
It certainly does. You've got Verstappen's extraordinary talent that's undeniable, still shining through, but the team is clearly grappling with significant challenges, both on the performance side with the car and on the operational side too.
And fixing those hurdles seems absolutely critical if they want to get back to consistently competing right at the very front and, secure another championship.
Absolutely paramount. The next few races, and seeing how things like that TD on Wingflex play out, it'll be crucial in seeing which way their trajectory is heading this season.
Well, that brings us to the checkered flag on this deep dive into the Verstappen and Red Bull situation. It's clear that while Max's talent is, as you say, undeniable, the team really does face some significant operational and performance hurdles to consistently challenge for the championship title right now. The coming races, the impact of any new technical directives, it's all going to be crucial in figuring out their path forward. Thank you so much for tuning in to F1 Blogs. If you enjoyed this analysis and you want to stay up to speed with all the latest F1 insights, please do make sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll be bringing you more in-depth discussions and perspectives on the whole world of Formula One. We'll see you next time on F1 Blogs.